So when I went to high school, I found myself developing a real passion for the arts. Theaters, musicals, all the stuff you watch on Glee. However, I found that my passions weren't exactly catered to in the public education school system, nor was my elective theater department's needs very high on my school's list of things to fund and help. We didn't have our own theater, and every day after school we'd have to walk to the middle school, no matter what the weather was, to use their beautiful theater so long as our schedules didn't conflict with their schedules. It's safe to say most of the focus on my school was on sports, and also sports. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I played on the sports team, and I understand the need for a good budget. You need uniforms, gear, balls, buses, coaches, I understand that. But what many people didn't and still don't realize is that theater and the arts needs all of that too. Directors, sets, costumes, lights, mics. The arts are a fundamental part of high school for kids who are not a fan of sports. It offers them an incentive and reasons to come to school. However, a low budget makes fostering these arts and nurturing growing students almost impossible. That's why I'm arguing that prioritizing arts programs in public schools would have a greater impact on students' effectiveness in school. My first claim is that the arts have a positive effect on students' mental health. Drama therapy is a term that many of you might not be familiar with, so let me define it for you. According to the North America Drama Therapy Association, drama therapy is the intentional use of drama and/or theater processes to achieve therapeutic goals. Essentially, it is the use of theater arts to help and provide children, teens, and adults an interactive and healthy way to overcome past traumas. According to Good Therapy, drama therapy can be used as a treatment for anxiety, depression, eating disorders, grief and loss, substance abuse, and post-traumatic stress. A majority of these listed ailments can be found in students from grades as low as 6 all the way up to 12. If we pushed for more funding to the arts programs, we could provide schools with the necessary tools to help reach out to students who may be struggling in school due to circumstances beyond their control. This would enable kids to work past their traumas and focus on doing better in school. My second claim addresses funding. Schools are facing budget cuts now more than ever. A letter by Melissa N., a high school student, which was published on Letters to the President, talks about how Harvard President Drew Foss states that funds have been cut in 80% of U.S. school districts since 2008, with the first programs to go being disciplines such as art, music, and foreign language. This limits the selection of electives a student has to pursue. It hinders creativity as it brings an abrupt stop to student potentially finding and discovering a passion for theater, music, or dance. Cutting arts programs in public schools also forces students to go outside to classes and studios to receive any type of engagement in the arts, which is oftentimes more than not expensive. This means that low-income families and students from low-income families do not have the same opportunities when it comes to engaging in the arts. All this combined can lead to students feeling left out or as if they didn't have a place they belong in school, leaving them to feel isolated and alone. Similarly, an article from USA Today exposed that the University of Arkansas spent $19.3 million on its sports teams throughout the duration of the 2015 to 2016 school year. They, without blinking, were able to add $2.3 million more to their sports budget, $2.3 million more than what they spent in the 2014-2015 school year. This, of course, including the $1.5 million it took just to feed the athletes. Meanwhile, students and teachers of public schools are often forced to buy their own costumes and scripts and so forth. When it comes to putting on shows or joining a choir program, such was the experience of myself and friends at my school, as well as the friends I met from other schools at an outside theater program, where, you guessed it, we had to purchase our own costumes because we were not funded enough money to purchase them through the department. My third claim is that the arts is not only beneficial to mental health, but to academic achievements as well. According to a study written in an article from USA Today, it makes comparisons between arts and the usual academic necessities with drama helping students to understand social issues and complex emotions, as well as story comprehension. Music improving math efficiency and proficiency in reading and cognitive development. Music also boosts SAT verbal scores and skills for secondary language learners. While dance helps students with creative thinking, originality, it improves expressive skills and self-tolerance, as well as self-confidence and persistence. All this to say that the arts are more than just an easy elective to get credits, and are more beneficial than helping with simply memorization skills. If we provided more schools with funding for the arts education, we would see a rise in student efficiency and a rise in student enjoyment of schools. Thank you.
Okay, the proposition's clearly identified. There's not a preview of what the supporting structure is going to be. In the body of the speech, though, you do signpost what the major claims are in the long run. I think you need to develop a little bit more information about the trade-offs that are being made on budgeting. There is one piece of data that you use in the presentation talking about how much has been cut, and it sounded like 80% of the schools have had some kind of cut since 2008. That's the number that jumped out at me, but the source on that was a little abstract, and the nature of those cuts, I'm not sure exactly show that it's the arts programs that are the ones that are being cut. I think that that's the implication that you're making there, but I think the proof on that needs to be a little bit more solid. The argument about mental health is okay. I mean, I think most activities are probably good for somebody's mental health. The notion that drama therapy is what is being accomplished in the schools by having kids participate in the school play, I think you might be conflating two different issues here. I do think that there is a benefit from doing that, but I'm not exactly sure it's the same kind of thing that is being used in treatment of people who are faced with a variety of the issues that you talked about. That there's a long-term benefit to people's mental health, that's a little bit more generic, and I think you provide a little bit of information on that. On the budget cut issues, this is where I think that we run into a little bit of trouble. Like I said, you had the one piece of information that talked about an 80% cut, and then I got information about the University of Arkansas and how much money they spent, and I'm going, well, wait a second, are we talking about colleges and universities, or are we talking about high schools and elementary schools? It's a little bit unclear. It seems like there is a difference between the two. And the University of Arkansas sports programs, for instance, not to put too fine a point on it, some of them bring in revenues. I don't know how much in terms of revenue, but that might in fact be one of the reasons why they had an increase in their funding. When you're talking about college programs, I think that's substantially different than when you're talking about high school programs, and that's where you started, was talking about the high school programs. The presentation, I think there's a lot of reading that you're doing, and you want to look at this a little bit more. I thought you were better in the beginning of the speech, but once you get to the body of the speech, you kind of look down, and that's where your focus is the whole time. And just out of curiosity, what's the high school that you went to?
Charter Oak?
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's where my kids went to